Hello, my name's Kev. Welcome to KG Grave. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content like this. A big thank you to all of you who are already subscribed. This is number 7, Kentucky. Kentucky is the 15th US state, also known as the Bluegrass State, where the capital is Frankfort. I was on holiday in Kentucky from the 20th of July to the 11th of August 2011 and visited 5 cemeteries and 7 graves covered in this video on the 28th and 29th of July. Okay, so let's get started. The first cemetery I visited was the concordunitedmethodistchurch Church in Bladeston, and the grave is that of Don Galloway. Donald Poe Galloway was born on the 27th of July 1937 in Brooksville, Kentucky. He was an American stage, film and TV actor. He was enlisted in the army from 1955 to 1957 and stationed in Germany. In 1961, Don received a bachelor's degree in drama from the University of Kentucky. In 1962, he moved to New York City, where he appeared off-Broadway in the play Bring Me Home a Warm Body, which earned him a Theatre World Award for Promising Newcomer. Don began his television career in 1962 in the New York-based soap opera The Secret Storm as the first actor to play Kip Rysdale.
This is The Secret Storm.
He then appeared as law clerk Mitchell Harris in 26 episodes of the short-lived TV legal drama Arrest and Trial, 1963 to 64. In 1963, Don signed up with Universal Studios and guest starred on numerous TV series including The Virginian, Wagon Train, Convoy, and Run for Your Life. Also in 1963, he married Linda Galloway and had 2 daughters, Tracy and Jennifer. He later got divorced and in 1989 married Linda Marie, who already had 2 children, Stella and Robert. He was also seen on Tom, Dick and Mary, 1/3 of the 90-minute weekly sitcom 90 Bristol Court, broadcast from 1964 to 1965. Don is most famous for his role as Detective Sergeant Ed Brown in the long-running crime drama series Ironside, alongside Raymond Burr from 1967 to 1975. It ran for 8 seasons and Don appeared in 198 of the 199 episodes. In his later career, Don appeared in the TV movie You Lie So Deep, My Love. He then continued to guest star on numerous TV series with appearances in Policewoman, Medical Center and Charlie's Angels, to name a few. In one of his few big screen appearances in 1983, he was in the film The Big Chill. He then joined the cast of the ABC soap opera General Hospital in 1985, playing Buzz Stryker until 1987. In 1988, Don appeared in the Perry Mason TV movie The Case of the Avenging Ace, reuniting him with former co-star Raymond Burr for the first time in 13 years. They had a long association with one another. Aside from Ironside and the subsequent Perry Mason movie in 1990, the 2 actors also starred together in the 1973 TV movie portrait, a man whose name was John. In 1993 they both appeared together on screen for the final time, reprising their Ironside roles in the TV reunion movie The Return of Ironside. In total, Don appeared in 12 films. After retiring from acting, he was reserve deputy for the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in 1993 for a year. Don died on the 8th of January 2009 at the renowned Regional Medical Center in Reno, Nevada, after suffering a stroke 2 weeks earlier. He was 71 years old. The second cemetery is the Frankfort Cemetery in Frankfort, where we visit 2 celebrity graves. First, we have Daniel Boone. Daniel was born on the 2nd of November 1734 and was an American pioneer and frontiersman, making him one of the first folk heroes of the United States. He was the 6th of 11 children in a family of Quakers. On the 14th of August 1756, he married Rebecca Bryan, a neighbour in the Yadkin Valley. The couple initially lived in a cabin on his father's farm and would eventually have 10 children, in addition to raising 8 children of deceased relatives. Daniel became famous for his exploration and settlement of what is now Kentucky, which was then beyond the western borders of the 13 colonies. Despite resistance from American Indians, for whom Kentucky was a traditional hunting ground, in 1775 he blazed the Wilderness Road through the Cumberland Gap and into Kentucky. There he founded Boonesborough, one of the first English-speaking settlements west of the Appalachian Mountains. By the end of the 18th century, more than 200,000 people had entered Kentucky by following the route marked by him. Daniel served as a militia officer during the Revolutionary War 1775 to 1783, which in Kentucky was fought primarily between American settlers and British Allied American Indians. He was taken in by Shawnees in 1778 and adopted into the tribe, but he resigned and continued to help protect the Kentucky settlements. He was elected to the first of his 3 terms in the Virginia General Assembly during the war and fought in the Battle of the Blue Licks in 1782, one of the last battles of the American Revolution. He worked as a surveyor and merchant after the war, but he went deep into debt as a Kentucky land speculator. Frustrated with legal problems resulting from his land claims, in 1799 he resettled in Missouri, where he spent most of the last 2 decades of his life. He remains an iconic, if imperfectly remembered, figure in American history. He was a legend in his own lifetime, especially after an account of his adventures was published in 1784, making him famous in America and Europe. After his death, he became the subject of many heroic tales and works of fiction. His adventures, real and legendary, helped create the archetypal frontier hero of American folklore. In American popular culture, he is remembered as one of the foremost early frontiersmen, even though mythology often overshadows the historical details of his life. In the 20th century, Daniel was featured in numerous comic strips, radio programs, novels and films, such as the 1936 film Daniel Boone. He was a subject of a TV series that ran from 1964 to 1970. In the theme song for the series, he was described as a big man in a coonskin cap, and the rippingest, roaringest, fightingest man the frontier ever knew. This did not describe the real Daniel, who was not a big man and did not wear a coonskin cap, which he thought uncouth and uncomfortable. Daniel died on the 25th of September 1820 at his son Nathan Boone's home on Femme Osage Creek, Missouri. He was buried next to Rebecca, who had died on the 18th of March 1813. The graves, which were unmarked until the mid-1830s, were near Jemima Boone, Galloway's home on Turk Creek, about 2 miles from present-day Marthasville, Missouri. In 1845, the Boone's remains were disinterred and reburied in a new cemetery in Frankfort, Kentucky. Resentment in Missouri about the disinterment grew over the years, and a legend arose that the remains never left Missouri. According to this story, the Boone's tombstone in Missouri had been inadvertently placed over the wrong grave, but no one had corrected the error. Their Missouri relatives, displeased with the Kentuckians who came to exhume the bodies, kept quiet about the mistake and allowed the Kentuckians to dig up the wrong remains. No contemporary evidence indicates that this actually happened, but in 1983 a forensic anthropologist examined a crude plaster cast of Daniel's skull made before the Kentucky reburial and announced it might be the skull of an African American. Black slaves are also buried at Turk Creek, so it is possible that the wrong remains were mistakenly removed from the crowded graveyard. Both the Frankfort Cemetery in Kentucky and the Old Bryan Farm Graveyard in Missouri claim to have the Boone's remains. The other location at Old Bryan Farm Graveyard in Missouri will be covered in a Missouri video. The second grave in Frankfort Cemetery is Elizabethhulette. Elizabeth Ann Hulette was born on the 19th of November 1960 in Frankfort, Kentucky. She was best known for her work in professional wrestling as a wrestling manager and announcer under the name Miss Elizabeth. While working for International Championship Wrestling as a TV announcer, she met Randall Poffo, who wrestled under the ring name of Macho Man Randy Savage. They married on the 30th of December 1984. Elizabeth's WWF debut was taped on the 30th of July and aired on the 24th of August 1985 edition of WWF Primetime Wrestling. From that point on, she was the manager of Randy Savage. She gained international fame from 1985 to 1992 in the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE, where during that time managed many different wrestlers. Elizabeth herself was featured in many stories, causing confrontation between many wrestlers, and briefly co-hosted WWF Wrestling Spotlight with Vince McMahon, CEO of WWE. She divorced Randy Savage in August 1992. Elizabeth retired from wrestling and disappeared from the spotlight for a few years. Elizabeth works for World Championship Wrestling, WCW, from 1996 to 2000. On the 23rd of January 1996, she returned to the screen, supposedly to manage both Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan, but part of the story was for her to trick Randy and helping Ric Flair defeat him in the match. Elizabeth briefly married Carrie Lubetsky, a South Florida attorney, on the 6th of December 1997. The wedding was held at the Cuban Hebrew Temple in Miami Beach. The marriage was short-lived as the couple soon separated and were officially divorced on the 19th of April 1999. Her final WCW appearance was on the 29th of May 2000 edition of WCW Monday Nitro, and Elizabeth quietly left World Championship Wrestling on the 17th of August 2000 when her contract with WCW expired. Being involved with Lex Luger on the 19th of April 2003, Elizabeth and Lex were involved in a domestic dispute. Lex allegedly struck her in the garage of their townhome in Marietta, Georgia. Cobb County Police found Elizabeth with 2 bruised eyes, a bump on her head, and a cut lip. Lex was charged with a misdemeanor count of battery and released on a $2,500 bond. On the 1st of May, in Marietta, Georgia, Lex called 911 to report that Elizabeth was not breathing. She did not respond to mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and paramedics rushed her to the Wellstar Kennystone Hospital emergency room, where she was pronounced dead at the age of 42. A medical examiner listed the cause of death as acute toxicity, brought on by a mixture of painkillers and vodka. Her death was ruled as suicide. The third cemetery I visited was Evergreen Cemetery in Louisville. Here I visited Wilson Pickett. Wilson was born on the 18th of March 1941 in Prattville, Alabama. He was an American singer and songwriter. He was the fourth of 11 children. His mother used to beat him, and on one occasion he ran away and cried for a week. He stayed in the woods with his little dog. He eventually left to live with his father in Detroit in 1955. Also in 1955, he joined the gospel group, the Violinaires, followed by the Falcons in 1959. He recorded the song, Let Me Be Your Boy, with the Primates as backing singers. His biggest success with the Falcons was I Found a Love, co-written by Wilson and featuring his lead vocals. While only a minor hit for the Falcons, it paved the way for him to embark on a solo career. After working with various labels including Atlantic, his first two singles didn't fare too well. His breakthrough came when he switched to the Atlantic subsidiary label Stax Records, whose studio was based in Memphis, Tennessee. Here he recorded In the Midnight Hour in 1965, which peaked at number 1 in the R&B chart. It sold more than 1 million copies and was awarded a gold disc. He also recorded many other hits at Stax, some featuring other famous artists like Isaac Hayes on keyboard and co-writing with Eddie Floyd. One was 6345789, also reaching number 1 in the R&B chart. Next he went to the famed studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Here he released some of his biggest hits, including Land of a Thousand Dances, which was his third number 1 on the R&B chart and again was a million seller. A major figure in the development of American soul music, he recorded over 50 songs which made the US R&B charts, many of which crossed over to the Billboard Hot 100. He changed to different record labels and released many more singles during the next 5 years. In terms of his chart success in the UK, he released 8 singles between 1965 and 1969 on the Atlantic record label. These included In the Midnight Hour, reaching number 12 in 1965, and the Beatles track Hey Jude, reaching number 16 in 1969. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991 in recognition of his impact on songwriting and recording. In 1992, he struck an 86-year-old pedestrian, Pepe Ruiz, with his car in Englewood. Police allegedly found 6 empty miniature vodka bottles and 6 empty beer cans in his car. Ruiz died later that year. Wilson pleaded guilty to drink driving charges. He agreed to rehab and received a reduced sentence of 1 year in jail and 5 years probation. A week after this incident, a judge ordered him to move out of his home after his living girlfriend charged him with threatening to have her killed and throwing vodka bottles at her. In 1996 he was arrested for assaulting his girlfriend Elizabeth Trapp while under the influence of cocaine. She refused to press charges. Wilson was charged with cocaine possession. He appeared in the 1998 film Blues Brothers 2000, in which she performed 6345789 with Eddie Floyd and Johnny Lang. He spent his twilight years playing dozens of concerts every year until 2004, when he began suffering from health problems. Wilson had been suffering for the last year of his life and died on the 19th of January 2006 at a hospital in Reston, Virginia, after suffering a heart attack at the age of 64. Singer Little Richard, a long-time friend of his, delivered the eulogy. The fourth cemetery is St. Michael in Louisville, where I visited 2 graves. The first grave is that of Jimmie Logsdon. James Lloyd Logsdon was born on the 1st of April 1922 in Panther, Kentucky. He was an American country and rockabilly singer, songwriter, and radio DJ. He graduated from high school in Ludlow, Kentucky in 1940 and married the same year, before starting work installing PA systems in nearby Cincinnati. He joined the Air Corps in 1944 and left 2 years later to open a record and radio shop in LaGrange, Kentucky. He learned the guitar and began writing songs, performing regularly on radio station WLOU and in clubs as leader of a country trio. He made his first recordings for the local Harvest record label in Cincinnati in 1951, and the following year joined station WKYW as senior announcer. He made his first recordings for Decca Records in Nashville, including I Wanna Be Mommed in October 1952. Later in 1953, Jimmie joined the station WHAS-TV and hosted and performed with his band the Golden Harvest Boys on its country music show. He continued to record for Decca, but his records had little success and he left the label in 1955. He also recorded for the Starday and Dot labels. He maintained a radio show on station WKLO and interviewed many leading country performers as well as Elvis Presley. His most famous recordings on the Roulette label was I Got a Rocket in My Pocket, co-written with Vic McAlpin under the pseudonym Jimmie Lloyd. I got a rocket in my pocket and a roll in my wall. After leaving Roulette, Jimmie continued working as a DJ at WCKY in Cincinnati and appeared on national radio shows. He made some further recordings for King Records in Cincinnati in 1963 before moving to work for other radio stations in Kentucky and Alabama later in the 1960s. Jimmie died on the 7th of October 2001 at the age of 79. The next grave in St. Michael's Cemetery is that of Victor Mature. Victor John Mature was born on the 29th of January 1913 in Louisville, Kentucky. He was an American stage, film and television actor. Victor studied and acted at the Pasadena Community Playhouse. He was spotted by Charles R. Rogers, an agent for Hal Roach. He signed a 7-year contract with Hal Roach in September 1939. He was cast in a small role in The Housekeeper's Daughter 1939, followed by his first leading role as a fur-clad caveman in 1 Million BC 1940. Next was Captain Caution, also in 1940. As Hal Roach only made a handful of movies every year, he loaned out Victor's services to RKO, who used him as a leading man in the Anna Neagle Herbert Wilcox musical No No Nanette. Victor made his musical debut on Broadway in Lady in the Dark in New York in January 1941 and was a smash hit. His performance was well received, Brooks Atkinson of the New York Times calling him unobjectionably handsome and affable. The description of Randy Curtis in the musical Beautiful Hunk of Man would be frequently used to describe him throughout his career. Victor missed some of the run due to an emergency appendectomy, but played the role until June. He next made several films with 20th Century Fox. In November 1941, Fox brought out the 4-year remaining on Victor's contract with Hal Roach for $80,000. He was paid $1,500 a week. In July 1942, Victor attempted to enlist in the US Navy, but was rejected for colourblindness. He enlisted in the US Coast Guard after taking a different eye test the same day. He was assigned to US CGC Storis, which was part of the Greenland Patrol. After 14 months aboard Storis, he was promoted to the rating of Chief Boatswain's Mate. In May 1945, he was reassigned to the Coast Guard manned troop transporter USS Admiral H.T. Mayo, which was involved in transferring troops to the Pacific Theatre. Victor was honourably discharged from the Coast Guard in November 1945, and he resumed his acting career. In 1946, he was cast by John Ford in My Darling Clementine, playing Doc Holliday opposite Henry Ford's Wyatt Earp, which was one of his finest performances. Victor's career received a massive lift when he was borrowed by Cecil B. DeMille at Paramount to play the lead in the $3.5 million biblical spectacular Samson and Delilah. He was reluctant to take on the role at first, out of fear of risking his new post-war reputation as a serious actor, but he changed his mind. Victor's next two big films were The Robe, 1953, and Demetrius and the Gladiators, 1954. The films were shot consecutively. The Robe, the first film shot in CinemaScope, was an enormous success, one of the most popular films of all time. In 1954, Victor signed a 2-picture deal with Columbia Pictures, giving him script and co-star approval at $200,000 a film. The first movie he made under the contract was The Last Frontier, 1955. After signing more contracts for different film studios and making many more films, in a 1978 interview he said of his decision to retire from acting at the age of 46, "It wasn't fun anymore. I was okay financially, so I thought, what the hell, I'll become a professional loafer." After 5 years of retirement, he was lured back into acting by the opportunity to parody himself in After the Fox, 1966. In a similar vein, in 1968, he played a giant, the Big Victor, in the film Head, a movie starring the Monkees. He enjoyed the script while admitting it made no sense to him, saying, "All I know is it makes me laugh." He came out of retirement again in 1971 to star in Every Little Crook and Nanny, and again in 1976 in One Ton Ton, The Dog Who Saved Hollywood. His last feature film appearance was a cameo as a millionaire in Firepower in 1979, while his final acting role was that of Samson's father, Manoah, in the TV movie Samson and Delilah in 1984. Victor made 72 feature films between 1939 and 1979 and earned close to $18 million. In his personal life, he was married 5 times. His first wife was Frances Charles from 1938 to 1940, which was annulled. Second was Martha Stevenson Kemp, the widow of band leader Hal Kemp from 1941 to 1943. Third was Dorothy Stanford Berry, 1948 to 1955. Fourth was Adrienne Erwick, 1959 to 1969, and fifth was Loretta Sibina, an opera singer from 1974 until his death, with whom he had his only child, daughter Victoria, born in 1975. Victoria became an opera singer like her mother. He was also engaged to Rita Hayworth before she married Orson Welles and to Anne Shirley. For his contribution to the motion picture industry, Victor has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame located at 6780 Hollywood Boulevard. He died of leukemia on the 4th of August 1999 at his home in California at the age of 86. The fifth and final cemetery in Kentucky is Saintpatrick in Maysville. Here I visit the grave of Rosemary Clooney. Rosemary was born on the 23rd of May 1928 in Maysville, Kentucky. She was an American singer and actress. She was one of 5 children. When she was 15, her mother and brother, Nick, moved to California. She and her sister Betty remained with their father. Rosemary and Betty became entertainers, whereas Nick became a newsman and television broadcaster. Some of her children, including Miguel Farrer and Raphael Farrer, and her nephew George Clooney, also became respected actors and entertainers. In 1945, the Clooney sisters won a spot on Cincinnati's radio station WLW as singers. Rosemary and Betty sang in a duo for much of Rosemary's early career. Rosemary signed with Columbia and cut her first record with Tony Pastor's big band in 1947. I'm Sorry I Didn't Say Sorry. She cut 14 sides with the Pastor band before making her solo recording debut in mid-1949 with Bargain Day in early 1951. She had a minor hit with Beautiful Brown Eyes, but her record of Come On to My House 4 months later became her first big chart hit. In 1954, she starred, along with Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye and Vera Ellen, in the movie White Christmas. In 1956, she starred in a half-hour syndicated television musical variety show, The Rosemary Clooney Show. The last major chart hit she had was I've Grown Accustomed to Your Face, released in May 1956, at which point rock and roll was quickly driving established pop singers from the charts. Rosemary left Columbia Records in 1958, doing several recordings for MGM Records and then some for Coral Records. Finally, towards the end of 1958, she signed with RCA Victor, where she recorded until 1963. In 1964, she was signed to Reprise Records and in 1965 to Dot Records. In 1976, she signed with United Artists Records for 2 albums. Beginning in 1977, she recorded an album every year for the Concord Jazz record label, a schedule which continued until her death. In 1995, Rosemary guest starred in the NBC television medical drama ER, starring her nephew George Clooney. For her performance, she received a Primetime Emmy Award nomination for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series. She was also awarded Society of Singers Lifetime Achievement Award in 1998. In 1999, she founded the Rosemary Clooney Music Festival, held annually in Maysville, her hometown. She performed at the festival every year until her death. She also received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2002. In the UK, her chart success was 7 singles between 1952 and 1957, including 2 number 1s with This Old House and Mambo Italiano featuring the Mellow Men. In her personal life, Rosemary was married twice to Puerto Rican movie star Jose Ferrer, 16 years her senior. She first married Ferrer on the 1st of June 1953 in Durant, Oklahoma. They moved to Santa Monica, California in 1954 and then to Los Angeles in 1958. Together the couple had 5 children, Miguel, Maria, Gabriel, Monsita and Raphael. They divorced for the first time in 1961. Rosemary remarried Ferrer on the 22nd of November 1964 in Los Angeles. However, the marriage again crumbled while Ferrer was carrying on an affair with the woman who would become his last wife, Stella McGee. The couple divorced again after she found out about the affair, this time in 1967. In 1968, her relationship with the drummer ended after 2 years. At this time, following a tour, she became increasingly dependent on tranquilizers and sleeping pills. She joined the presidential campaign of close friend Robert F. Kennedy and heard the shots when he was assassinated on the 5th of June 1968. A month later, she had a nervous breakdown on stage in Reno, Nevada, where she began shouting insults at the audience. She was hospitalized and remained in psychoanalytic therapy for 8 years. Her sister Betty died suddenly of a brain aneurysm in 1976. Her grave will be covered in a later video on Nevada. In 1983, Rosemary and her brother Nick co-chaired the Betty Clooney Foundation for Brain Injuries. In 1997, she married her longtime friend and a former dancer, Dante DiPaolo, at Saintpatrick's Church in Maysville, Kentucky. A long-time heavy smoker, Rosemary was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2001. Her final show was at Red Bank, New Jersey's Count Basie Theatre in December 2001. Despite surgery and a long period of care following, she died 6 months later on the 29th of June 2002 at the Beverly Hills home at the age of 74. Her nephew George Clooney was a pallbearer at the funeral. That completes the Alabama graves, and please leave feedback below. If you have enjoyed watching this video, then please like, subscribe and hit the bell for more content like this. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.